My name is Dr. Liz Burton-Crow, and I'm the Director of Education for the Carrillo Center for Nonviolence. Welcome back to Living One, our monthly webinar series where presenters from around the world share their vision of a future in which humans and other animals live as one community in peace and wellness. Given all that's unfolded the past several years, these conversations are more important than ever, for they are more than mere conversations. They are opportunities for building community, salve for the isolating wounds of our time. Through Living One, together we attempt to answer the question, we know it's wrong, but what does right look like? This month, we welcome Deena Metzger, a writer, healer, and teacher whose work spans multiple genres, including the novel, poetry, nonfiction, and plays. She is the author of many books, including the novels A Reign of Night Birds, concerning two climatologists, the Negra y Blanca, a feral, and The Other Hand. Her other books include The Burden of Light, Ruin and Beauty, and Entering the Ghost River, Meditations on the Theory and Practice of Healing. Metzger co-edited Intimate Nature, The Bond Between Women and Animals, which pioneered the radical understanding that animals are highly intelligent and exhibit intent. Her experiences with elephants in the wild over 20 years is based on their spiritual agency and complex narrative communication. Some of that experience is chronicled in her forthcoming novel, La Vieja, A Journal of Fire. She has developed the literature of restoration to, among other goals, advance earth-based writing, restore climate, and counter extinction. And interviewing Deena today is our very own Dr. Gabe Bradshaw.
Hello, everyone, and welcome, Deena. I have to say that I am so thankful that you wrote La Vieja, the book, not least of which that I get a whole hour with you. Well, if not alone, shared, but a whole hour with you. I have to say that I really don't know where to start. I do know where to start, but listening to the whole list of your beautiful accomplishments and generous gifts to the world is really moving. And I encourage everyone to dig in, if you haven't already, to walk through and enjoy the beautiful work of Deena. Well, Deena, congratulations on your new book, La Vieja, which was published just this 1st of March.
Right.
Wonderful. Unfortunately, also it was, or perhaps timely, coincident with some big world events, the IPCC report, which came out earlier in that month, as well as what's happening in Europe and the Ukraine and Russia. So to me, when I opened your book, when I first looked at it, it's a book, but really what struck me was when I opened the first pages, it was like falling into a different world. And I really would like to begin with La Vieja. And my first question to you is, when you open the book, 2 pages in, it gives the title and says, "This is not a novel." So say something about that disclaimer.
Well, it's a book, among other things, about relationship with the earth, a developing relationship with the earth and with animals, with bears in particular, that La Vieja, the old one, the elder, lives through. And it's real. And there are stories also told about my relationship with elephants, for example, that are real. And to relegate this to the area of fiction, that is, oh, this is just something we could imagine and we don't have to pay attention to it, would dismiss what the book is really about. And what I appreciate so much is you speak about falling into it, because last week, after it came out, when I finally read it in covers, as if it were a book that had come into my hands, I fell into it as well. And I understood it. I understood that through some gift of transmission, I suppose, or the transmission from La Vieja herself, it is a world, and it calls us to enter that world so that we might be able to restore Earth and her extraordinarily beautiful life forces.
Well,
So,
I think you bring up something that's so important, that when we are called to write a book or express something that we've experienced or that is meaningful, we're pressed to say this is a fact. This is something I thought of, or fact or fiction, in other words. And I think that's what you've done, and that you've expressed perhaps all your life. But in this way here, and again, I think it's so timely, is that you sort of opened a page into this other world in which we're all embedded. And you and I have spoken about that there's a world that we all live in, but the animals, in particular the elephants and the bears, whom you have had very close contact and relationships with, that live in that world all the time. That is their world. And it is not just the world of the animals that we Cartesians, we dualists see.
and that also when La Vieja appeared, she's not someone I made up. And the idea that committed writers make up these things seems wrong to me. This is the reality. The spirits, the animals, the earth, an integrated, dynamic, living organism of extreme intelligence that we could not possibly make up or imagine. Our task is to learn how to live within it again. Once we did, but now at least non-Indigenous people no longer live in it.
Who is La Vieja? Describe her.
Well,
I know that's a challenging question.
because
a little bit of a spoiler.
Okay, so an old woman appeared and asked the writer to write her life, to write the life that she was living. She would tell us nothing about her past. But what she did say was that she had decided to live in a fire lookout in the California Sierras. And she went there to begin with for a short time, perhaps, but while she's there, she realizes she's going to spend the rest of her life there. And her original intent is to be able to see. When you are in a fire lookout, you're above the tree line and you can see 15 miles in every direction so that you can really watch for fires. And she wanted to see, but she wanted to see the fires and where they started and why they started and how to put them out. And can we put out the fires that we set thousands and thousands of years ago by the way we're living? When she's there for some years, she stops looking far and begins looking right into the place where she is. And she understands that's what we're called to. Can we really see the exquisite nature of the earth in that small place where we're standing? So that's as much as we know about La Vieja, because she's a mystery.
Now, do you think she was present and with you when you first met the elephants? Perhaps you might just say a little bit more about your story and your encounters with elephants.
Yeah. I think the spirit that was with me when I met the elephants was the elephant. I think there was a moment, and I'll say a word in a moment, but there was a moment after we had an encounter that all of us in the car thought, oh, this is the divine. And it happened to be Epiphany. Just happened to be. Epiphany, 1999, Chobe, Botswana. I had an idea, I want to say placed in my mind, that I wanted to sit in council with the elephants. And when people ask me, what do I mean by that? I said, I have no idea. So we went to Chobe, which has the largest number of elephants in one place in Africa. And we went out every day, but the very last day was the time that was given to me. And so I had this focus. I wanted to meet an elephant. And at some point, the man that was driving, a healer, a Nanga from Zimbabwe, saw a fisher eagle and that land on a tree, that being his totem animal. He just went to the tree and stopped there. So we can say fisher eagle showed us where to stop. And then in the far distance, I saw an elephant. And I felt, now we have seen hundreds, if not thousands of elephants. And I felt the terror of possibility. And I watched him walk slowly, until he was, I don't know, 10 feet away from me. I was in the back of a truck, the open back of a truck. And he could easily have put his trunk around me. And we looked in each other's eyes for a good 30 minutes. And then suddenly we had to leave and he was gone. And when we were leaving the park, all his people came down and lined up along the river road that we were driving along. And they literally bowed their heads and flapped their ears, and we bowed our heads to them. And we realized we had been in the most extraordinary experience. And it happened again every time I went back, except once. Every time I went back to Africa, so maybe 12 times, and also different places with different guides. And I saw Christina Jerzakowski here somewhere. So she and I went back and we also had that experience. The elephants came, and the configuration of their meeting with us was a narrative that revealed a real contact and story. So was La Vieja there? I don't think so. I think she comes at another time. I think she comes literally just before the time of COVID. And she comes at a time when we're seriously being called to stop the way we're living. And she comes as a messenger about stop and look and radically change your life. And COVID gave us that time, gave us 2 years. And who knows what the next configuration will be, since we clearly didn't get it. We haven't stopped in any way. We haven't changed our lives enough to shift the demise of the planet.
But the fire lookout and the fire seems to be inextricably connected to La Vieja.
Yes. So the increase of fire season, which Gay knows so well and so frighteningly. And that prayer that's also in the book, which your concern with fires at Carolus is, how are you going to protect the animals? And I remember speaking with you about this so much last summer and the summer before.
But there's something extraordinary to me why she has chosen, I know where you live and where you and I live, but there seems to be something about the fire for her.
Well, she's come to this fire lookout to watch for fires. But when she looks out, she sees all the fires that are burning on the planet and all the fires in the past. And her fear, of course, is the fires of the future. And there's a section in the book where it said, this is the fire next time. This is the epic of the fire next time that Baldwin predicted. And we're watching it and we can't stop. So with La Vieja, then there's the writer, and the writer realizes that for her to be able to transmit someone like La Vieja, she has to become like La Vieja, and she's nowhere near there. But for the years that she's writing the book, she sits out. I'm pointing, of course, some of you know where I'm pointing to, in the southeast corner of this land. And she can see into the state park and to the ocean. She can see all the way around 360 degrees. And she's also watching for these fires. And she sees the old ones. She sees the dire wolves and the woolly mammoths that used to be here. And she can watch them go down to the water. And is asking the same question: how can we put out the fires that we have been setting for so many years? Because the fires, when they're put out, they're not put out. It's like a war never ends, not the kind of wars we are involved with. They never end, and the fires haven't been put out because the ways that we're living start the fires. And the animals don't set fires. You may have noticed they suffer them, and there's a section in here where a bear is on fire. Because, of course, that's what happens. And we have to see that too.
It reminds me what you just said about they never go out. That I think it was years ago. I heard a story that there were two, I think they were teenage boys, and somewhere Marin County-ish, around there, maybe Mendocino, and they were camping. And they had a little campfire, and they did all the right things. They covered it, and they covered the soil. The fire was soil, which you're told to do to get out the embers, etc. And the fire burned underground. And it created this catastrophic fire, which, decimated the town. And the boys, of course, I don't know what happened, but they were just absolutely devastated about that, even though he had done the right thing. And when you talked about that the fires don't go out, it kind of reminds me of that. It's it seems like it's calling for even a more, radical change than radical,
Right.
in the sense of not even setting the fires to begin with,
Right.
when we don't even have the capacity that we think we have in order to right the quote unquote wrong, or in order to master, and I use that term on purpose, the environment. And I mean, to me, it starts to get into this chain of, well, okay, we did some wrong things, so now we're going to fix it. So to me, that's like Vieja, is when you fall into this world, it seems to me that the solutions as such come from that world.
Right. And they come from living according to the laws of that world. And that's part of what the book is about. How can we discern the laws of the natural world and the laws that all the living beings follow? And can we learn to live accordingly and not according to the laws that we have created to support our withdrawal? Because if we hadn't withdrawn from the natural world, we would not have to create the legislative system. And I have always felt that every time we pass a law, it means it's a failure of morality. It's a failure of our knowing how to live.
Does someone need to do you think people need to fall in and live in that world in order to understand how to make the change?
Absolutely. I don't think you can make it from the mind, and I don't think you can make it from reading. I think you literally have to be on the earth, watching and yielding to it, and accepting to begin with its intelligence. If we keep thinking that we're the smart ones and they don't know anything, not going to work. So part of what's happening is this book tries to reveal how it works, how it is when you recognize the intelligence, what happens to you and what kind of interactions are possible. But the interactions that are happening are always in the book about yielding.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talk about, of course, one of my favorite subjects, Charlie Russell and the bears. And would you say, from what you know of Charlie and the bears,
yes,
would you say that they were of that world, and that they are exemplars of how, what it feels like and what it looks like to live in the world that lies between the covers that you have revealed?
Well, first of all, this book would not exist without Charlie, and therefore this book would not exist without you. There's no question about it, because what I know about Charlie, I know through you, through your book, and through the remarkable conversations. So in that sense, you spoke with Charlie, and I got to speak with you, and here we have a book. But there's that iconic moment that you mentioned. Charlie is in Siberia. He's gone to confirm for himself, as I understand it, that bears are not aggressive to humans, but they can read their psyches, and he wants to be able to see if he can have some kind of connection with them. He did not expect, as you put it, to be enlisted as a babysitter. But his exquisite sensitivity and intelligence that allowed him to recognize that invitation and then to respond to it, and to recognize the intelligence of the bear that could read his mind and heart and trust him, that's as much a recognition of the bear as it is of Charlie, right? The bear could discern, so sensitive to another species that she could trust him and then train him to raise or co-raise, comadre, her 3 sets of bears. Well, after you read that and you hear that story, then I think you have to sit with it and really try to fathom what's being told to us through that. That is beyond extraordinary. And so Charlie is our ambassador, right? I had an elephant ambassador. Charlie is our bear ambassador. And Bear Mama.
Brandy.
She's our ambassador as well. It takes 2 to have that conversation. And so there's a moment in the book where the writer hears a voice in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and the voice says, "The bears have come." And at first, she's a little hesitant about it because she doesn't want to be inflated. What do you mean the bears have come? To her, ridiculous. But then she realizes that she can't ignore it. She must pay attention. And the implication is that the bears as a species recognize that they must change us. They must educate us. And they are looking, as I believe the elephants looked, for those people who will open to them.
Do you have a passage that you can read about that at hand?
About the bears have come?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's see. Oh dear, but I have to find it, right? So give me a moment.
You've become your book. It's hard to find a place.
You know, I spent all time preparing the course, but who can find it after you've prepared like this?
Doesn't have to be that particular passage. Anyone that would be. There's so many.
Okay. These words awakened me at 4:12 a.m. They asked me to accept a reality that challenges non-Indigenous humans. The bears have come to La Vieja through the 2 who are below her, and I'll speak about this in a moment. And in the ways her reality and mine intersect, I am privy to her field of awareness, and so they have come to me. So this feels very important, not that we make things up, either with the animals or with the characters they come. We are privy to their field of awareness. Reflexively, I want to humbly refute this, as they didn't come to me, not in the ways the elephant came, or I was able actually to be with them in the wild, trunk to hand, contact, communication. Not in the way they came to Charlie Russell, the great and unparalleled bear whisperer. But still, I can't deny what I just heard, 4:12 a.m. I hear these words and they repeat again and again. The line startles me awake and then doesn't let me fall asleep again. The reality is startling and changes everything. If this is true, and I have to accept it, then we live in a world entirely different from the one we are trained to accept as real. The bears have come, is what I heard, meaning we are here, meaning pay attention and be respectful, meaning refusing to accept this out of false humility is an abdication of responsibility for a relationship that is critical at this time. 2 years ago, I put a bear crossing sign on the fence at the entrance to this land. It's a prayer, I said, hoping the bears would return to this area to the first time since 1916. Coexisting would allow us to begin to make amends for thousands of years of cruelty, which have turned a Pacific species into one which is wary, on alert, territorial, protective, and when necessary, aggressive. Here come the two-legged murderers, the hunters. They deny us food. They kill us for sport. They shoot our babies in their caves. Watch out. Protect the little ones. We ask the great bear God, how did you allow this to happen? So coexisting, really learning how to coexist, how to completely respect the intelligence and the life and the homes and the habits of the animals would allow us to understand what we say we're interested in. We say we want to know the nature of this world. That's why we have science. Well, now let's see, are we willing to do this?
But isn't it more than coexistence? Isn't there no co? Isn't it beyond it? Isn't it just existence? Isn't it being? And again, your world, this world. There is no co. There's just one existence. And I think that is really what I hear from La Vieja. And there's an implicit union in which one of my favorite William James quotes is in which we live in a world of accidental fences and all of our minds are plunged into the sea of consciousness. How do we live in that? How would you tell someone how do they live in that sea of consciousness in the way you're talking about it? To me, it speaks of losing, in other words, it's a completely letting go. In fact, a friend and colleague of mine who's a Buddhist teacher talked about this whole notion. He said, I won't go through the whole story, but he said he had this moment of bravado, trying to impress his girlfriend years ago with a brother who was a paratrooper, and said, I'd like to jump out of a plane. And he said, there he was. And he said, it was the most extraordinary experience because he had to let go. How do we let go? I hear that in here. I hear this in La Vieja. I hear what you're saying. Tell us, how do we let go?
It's more than letting go. In the I Ching, it's called stripping. You literally give up as much as you can of what creates the barrier or gives us a sense that our needs are more important, that we must take care of ourselves and take care of ourselves first, that we must eat first before they eat, that we must have a house before they have a house. maybe the method is to allow oneself such love for the other, for the earth, for the animals. Now we can't speak particular animals, all of them, all the beings, such love that you just think about their welfare as a mother may for when a child is born. That's all you think about. How are you going to take care of this child? Well, okay, how are we going to take care of this earth? But we can't be the mother. It's a kind of contradiction. It's not this good thing we're going to do. What can we let go of? Every single moment, there's one other thing you can let go of so that the others can thrive. And it's some terrible self-scrutiny. We have to see how we've lived. And it has to break our hearts.
How does that happen for an individual? Because we're talking about our species, but at the same time, it's an individual who is going through this process and this stripping, as you talked about. What is the stripping for an individual?
Well, it's different, right? Isn't it, for every individual? But the first is give up being human-centered.
And what does that look like? In a very everyday way. I told you I'd push you.
No, I wish I could go to the page now. Maybe I can for
That'd be wonderful.
For La Vieja. So there's a moment where she starts recognizing that things have changed. And she's been walking around this platform, the platform from which she can see in all directions. That becomes her practice. That's her life. She walks around it. Well, when you go round and round like that, you're creating a vortex. And that vortex begins to change you just by its motion. And then she goes down. First, she's walking on the platform. Then she's walking on an invisible platform that we can't see. And then she's down in the earth, walking round and round. Finally, she carved an inconspicuous path that was very essential. Inconspicuous. That was level enough through the grove of firs to circumambulate them again and again until the energy of the rotation began to dissolve the seeming differences between the various beings who lived there, of which she was one. A new way of reflecting on herself. The human, with its adamant and singular importance, seemed to be dissolving in her, as if a preoccupying pain in a finger was easing in favor of being a particular manifestation of the life force, nothing more. This is where the seasons she had spent on this land had taken her. Each day she gently probed further into what the natural world might be thinking, asking permission to participate alongside the others. No more than permission. She wanted an invitation that would allow her to be integrated into Earth's physics and laws, to relinquish distance and space, to blur the hard edges of her body, mind, and heart.
Thank you, Deena. That was beautiful.
Well, let me just read this. She began to understand that this is why she had come here, just beginning to understand. She was no longer committed to looking far, as she had claimed in the beginning, as I, the writer, still attempt to do, but wanted to enter and explore here, because it's all here, in this spot, as long as soil and rock remain. Here is beginning. Here is an underlying intelligence, the foundation of everything, the bass note, the drone. But it wasn't exploration any longer. It was both being present and yielding, allowing herself to be penetrated everywhere, and then inevitably penetrating, but without dominating, to be another grain of sand in Earth's realm, ruled by her laws. This was now La Vieja's goal. So, in a way, ultimately, we're going to have to give up everything: our ambitions, our hopes, our desires, our lives, how they're going to be, our clothes, our prizes, our books.
Not all books.
Even our books, right? All of it. Because it doesn't matter. What are our lives? We have no idea. So, not easy.
Why isn't it easy?
Because we're raised with ambition. We're raised with, what are you going to become? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be, as opposed to welcome to this world? Now, I don't want you to think that I've come to this place of development. Yes. I am not. I wish I were here. I'm not here. But I understand this is a place to go. And I watch my own, of course, I'm of a certain age, but I watch my own ambitions fall away. I watch them matter less and less. And I watch the development of an inordinate love for the natural world. And I think that's how each person, because you're asking how does each person do it, how does each person open their hearts in this way to love the earth and her beings more than oneself? I don't know. But that's the question for each one of us, I think.
Well, Thomas Merton said something like this, that the true authentic self is life. So from what you're saying, and also Brother Merton, is we mistake our identity, we mistake ourself. And so perhaps one of the pivotal nut to crack as such is relinquishing or changing our view of what self is. And when that changes, that concept of self and perception of self, then there is love.
Right.
Which is what I think Charlie was. I mean, I think he knew he was, I don't think he functioned in, I think, Brandy, the bear, the mama bear. Mm-hmm. I call her the Madonna, the corn mama deer out here, who is a Madonna. She's incredible. I think that they are not hung up on the external bit. That's the form that they function in. But it does not define them. It's a vehicle for them, but it does not define them, nor does it define their perception.
Right. And they're not into establishing that the Bear Nation is the greatest nation that's ever been, and everybody should live according to Bear Nation ways.
Has La Vieja, and has it changed you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And not enough yet, but it was somewhere in the middle of writing the book that I realized that I had to become more like La Vieja in order to transmit her with some integrity. And
Is she still with you?
well, I don't know because, I don't want to talk about the end of the book, but because of the end of the book, I don't know if she's still with me because it's not about whether I want her to be with me. It's what her intentions are. And I think she may say, I gave you, meaning all of us, enough. And I'm not here to entertain you. So now you have enough to work with for a while.
Get to work.
Get to work. Get to work. She's still with me in that her call and demand is with me as if she were right here in the room. In that sense, yes.
Can
It's
you?
a funny business writing. It's a funny business writing.
Well, your writing is beyond writing. I know that the people are going to want to ask questions and all, but can I ask you is there I won't say a favorite, but is there a passage that you would just gift us?
Right. Well, I just decided to read what I opened to. So, one of the things that happens early on in the book is La Vieja is up in the lookout and she looks down the stairs and she sees there are two people down below. And she thinks, oh, they must be hikers or tourists or something. And then she looks more and she realizes that though she recognizes the trees, they're not quite in the same configuration. And in fact, as it turns out, she sees this couple, Leonie and Lucas, but they're 300 miles away and another lookout. Today, I recognize that coming to La Vieja, coming to Leonie and Lucas, the bears have come to me. We are in it together. The bears, Leonie, Lucas, La Vieja, and I. This is not a novel or a memoir. This is a record, as accurate as I can render of how it is, of how things are in the real world. In this world, the bears are present, alert intelligence, coherent species, waiting for the barbarian two-leggeds to come to some inner order that will prevent the destruction of all life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Deena.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'll turn this over to our audience and Liz.
Thank you both. And thank you to La Vieja as well for being here in this conversation. It's hard to follow that because it's very soulful and deep and wonderful. And I thank you so much, Deena, for sharing with us. I am going to have to pivot now to more of like the shameless plug of please do join us next April 3rd will be our next Living One event, and we'll have Ashley Heron who will be joining us. So with that said, if you would like to ask a question, whatever is most comfortable for you, if you would like to unmute yourself or raise your hand. Alternatively, if you aren't confident, speaking yourself, or for whatever reason you'd prefer to remain anonymous, you can go ahead and type your question in the chat and I'll read it out loud for you. So is there anyone who would like to kick us off?
Looks like Meg McLeod had a hand up. Is that right?
She has a parrot with her.
Oh, okay. Is that what I saw?
I didn't see a wing raise, but there's always a chance.
Sharon.
Sharon?
Yes. Hi. Gay, your question about how do you do that? How do you change? Took me to, of course, in the book, have watched La Vieja work the writer. So the writer is, there's the one consciousness, like you said, there's not a dual, but then again, there's La Vieja, who is working on the writer, who is not so sure sometimes, but then gives in. I can't give you an example. I wish I could right now, but it's constant. So I'm watching the transformation of the writer and I'm not going to call her a character. I think she's a spirit, but whatever. I think that before my eyes, I see how transformation works and what is asked and what has to be let go of. That's from the book. That's what I'm getting.
Can only say yes to that. Yeah.
Thank you, Sharon. Does anyone else have a question or a comment? We do have one comment in the chat, which is, yes, Deena, falling hopelessly in love is the way. There's a term that comes to mind for me, which is biophilia, which I don't know if you guys are familiar. Raymond, did you have a question or comment? Oh, you're muted, so go ahead and unmute yourself real quick. Maybe I can unmute you. Do we love technology? Well, perhaps while Raymond is figuring out the mute situation, is there someone else who would like to squeeze in there real quick?
Well, I'll make, me, I can always talk forever. Deena, you and I have talked about this, and I want to bring this up because I think it is important from Sharon, my question and your response of the how-to is, I think there's something of shifting our sensibilities and our sense of importance and our sense of being open to believing something that we don't know. And that to me is the La Vieja. I repeat myself when I said I fell into the book. And that's very much like David Bohm uses different words, but that's the way he and other quantum physicists have talked about, relatively no space-time. The whole notion of the connection at a distance. And those, I guess, something that I thought was so beautiful about La Vieja and is beautiful is it was a very tangible experience. And in its tangibility as an experience was a reification of the invisible. And I think that's something that is so, that I think that's a difficult thing for people. It's been difficult for me in the sense of listening to your senses, listening to your no what you know, and not saying, oh, that's just a fictional character. Sharon, like you said, it's just a character. And believing in the invisible that you know, in the visible that you discover. And having this notion of falling into the world that we really live in, of which, Deena and I were just talking earlier about this notion we're kind of in plain land, PLANE, where we're only seeing a little slice of something, but we're not seeing all of the dimensions. And understanding that there are dimensions that we are experiencing, but we don't acknowledge, and they've been conditioned out of us in that way. But I did want to bring up, and Deena, please, add or elaborate. The whole, this is not new in the quote unquote non-indigenous psyche. Quantum physics is a reification of, in the language of the collective, accepted science. And I would say that that's another portal for individuals to start taking seriously and looking like a mirror at themselves. What does quantum physics tell us? When you're in La Vieja, what is she saying and telling me?
Well, when I tried to understand how it was that I would meet with the elephant ambassador and his people in whatever form they presented themselves, in whatever place, at the last hour, at the same place, at the last hour of the last day, what I understood was that we entered into a common field of consciousness and awareness, and it was as if we each were dissolved in it and manifested in response to each other, so that it made sense that the elephants reached me 3,000 miles away, knew that I came to Africa to be with them, and then made this appointment, without calendars, without email, without anything. There we were, there they were. It's because there is no distance, because it's all, that's another way of understanding here, present moment. Everything is here in this place. And it's like that particle from which the world, the entire universe formed. In that moment, there's one particle, and the Big Bang, the big opening, and everything's in it. Nothing can be created outside of it. Everything is in that tiny particle. We have to understand that. That's a spiritual understanding. The science is almost irrelevant. It's just we talk that language. But to understand that everything is there. Yeah.
I wanted to say something about love as well. Susan's comment. I had an experience years ago with a gentleman that later became a dear friend. And I was very nervous to meet him. He's an American Indian, a Sioux Indian. And he was speaking with me. And I just worshiped him. I mean, I was just blown away by his books and the person himself. And he starts talking about the buffaloes from the sun, in the Sioux ontology, the buffaloes, giant buffaloes came from the sun. And he's telling me this. And this incredible dialogue started in my brain. I mean, this was in microseconds, if we're thinking chronology. So one's like going, buffaloes from the sun, what the hell does that mean? And the other one's like, he says buffaloes from the sun, just listen. Oh, doesn't seem to make sense, buffaloes from the sun. And the one said, do you respect and love him? And they said, yes. And that moment, I was open. Something opened out of love. out of deep, deep love. I mean, we had just met, but it was this incredible, deep, very deep kinship love in the way I think you're talking about, Susan and Deena. And I swear to you that it's like if you had taken one of those zebra things, they use at the supermarket, before and after, I would read completely different. It was like internal neural circuits had, melted. I think melted was it.
Yeah. Yeah. What comes to me is there's a section in the book where I'm talking about the animal orchestra that I had once imagined. I wanted to call musicians together to go back out into the wild where the animals have gone extinct and begin to play as best as we could the music that they each carried, so as to restore the sound universe, and through restoring the sound universe, to restore the universe. In fact, and thinking about many different native traditions that say the animals, they're not extinct, they have left, meaning they are elsewhere but here. And if we can imagine that, elsewhere but here, how can we make the world hospitable again for them so that they can return? That's a different concept than can we find their old DNA and restore them somehow in a laboratory? No, we have to create out of our love and our deep caring a hospitable universe that we guarantee will sustain them so that they can return.
Thank you. So, Raymond, did you want to ask a question? No? Can't? Okay. Okay. I'll leave you alone then. Okay, so we do have one in the chat here. It says, thank you for bringing us into your loving present moment today. Indigenous ways of knowing involve the dream world. Just curious how this might manifest in your consciousness and writing.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So how do Indigenous ways of knowing and involving the dream world manifest in your consciousness and writing?
Well, in my community, we've been living by dream for, I don't know, the last 30 years, 40 years, forever. We don't just tell dreams. We live by them. We tell them so that we can learn how to live. We believe that dreams are serious messengers sent by the spirits or the dream spirits to teach us as a community how to live. So every class, every gathering, every Zoom, people, say, what do you think about this? Well, I had this dream. So I'll tell the dream that has been guiding me, and I think it's a direct answer to what was just asked. I dreamt in 2016, I believe, 2016, that I had won a contest, and I'd actually won this contest 3 times, though I hadn't even known that it existed. But now I'm told that I won it, and the prize was that I would be taken to New York for a year, and I would be educated so that at the end of the year, I would know how to think as an Indigenous woman. And then I woke up And I thought, well, how in the world can I live this? And so I began asking myself, every time I had a decision to make, every time I had to think about something deeply, what might an uncolonized indigenous elder say or do in such circumstances? And I humbly think it changed me. I still ask that. I'm so aware that the indigenous elder that I imagine responds very, very, very differently than I have been taught, and that my reflexes still are. And so that's where dream came in. We think it teaches us ethics, that the dreams teach us how to live, and that we have to pay deep attention. And that when we meet in Dare, for example, which is our monthly community meeting, open to everyone, and you can read about it on my website. We have a dream section at night where we tell dreams, and we have discovered that one person tells a dream, the next person tells a dream, the next person tells a dream. They're the same dream. That for the most part, the dreams are in fact coming to the community that has constituted itself, and it's come through so many of the people who are there, which confirms the importance of dreaming.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or? Oh, I see a hand up. Yes, Christina.
Okay, I've unmuted myself. Greetings and thank you, Gay, for bringing Deena to us in this way. And thank you, Ashley, for your coordination. And Deena, I wrote down some of your words from the book, and what continues to echo. And it's about penetrating without domination. And that to me is just, again, as many of your words and in our shared experiences is the into the heart. And I wonder if you would speak a little bit more about allowing us to be penetrated through those experiences that so many, if not all of us, on this time together have. And perhaps how in all of our collective work that we do model having been penetrated, how we spread that force beyond the ways that each of us does. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. It's such a mystery, but if we're dissolved in the field of consciousness, then we've penetrated it, right? Our atoms are of it, but we're not dominating, and their atoms are in us, and we are of each other, consistently of each other. And I think it's the mystery of being individuals within the one. I think that's what we really have to learn, that we are particular within the all. And not focus on our individuality because it is. I mean, we're human, or we're this particular person. That's who we are. I'm not a bear, but I can be with bear in bear consciousness, and then we become of each other in that moment without distinction, and without losing who we are. It's a mystery. It's a great, beautiful mystery.
Thank you. Annie, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you, Gay, for this wonderful interview, and Liz for helping to put this together, and Deena for all of your wise words, and for La Vieja. I often wonder how, and this question could be for Gay or for Deena, oftentimes when talking about climate change and disillusion in the environment, when you step outside of communities like this, or at least I am often met with a certain level of like, you're naive to the way that the world actually works, or we're never going to get there, or, all the corporations, they're going to have to change first. There's so much resistance to what feels so urgent and so serious, and being met with a response that we're people who care about talking about this field and this energy and respecting animals and the earth in this way, that in some way we are naive, even though it seems like somewhat of an ancient knowledge. So I wonder how you carry that, and how you meet that, and how you continue to spread that in a world that seems to not take it, continues to not take it seriously.
I want to say that I must not limit my behavior for 1 second based on whether I can convince someone or not. That is an incredible waste of energy. And that I must not change how I speak in order to try to argue with them, which is their way. So what if I refuse to argue? And the point is, if I don't live my life the way I know it needs to be lived, we're not going to get out of this, and they'll be right. So I can only continue. And when I have doubts about it, I just know that if we don't do it, all life is lost. Just how it is. My energy and alliance and concern is focused on the beings of the natural world and the earth. And for the rest of it, I'll assume that some people, at least, will catch it from us. I think that this way of living and being is contagious. Gay, do you have?
Well, what came to mind, hi Annie, nice to meet you. And one less degree of separation than email. Well, recently, what came to mind was I have a dear friend who's a doctor in Russia. And he sent me this photograph that he took. And the subject line on the email was, "My congratulations." And the photograph was a cherry tree up close in blossom. And I was so moved by that. Just like I am with the animals with whom I live in the trees and the land, because they just keep on keeping on. And what I loved about it, it was just so moving, because it's kind of like I'm blossoming, and with the deer, I'm going to have some babies and I'm going to eat and I'm going to do this and that, they're not oblivious. They're all in an integrated whole, which we don't understand. They're not individuals. David Bohm talks about that, that, I mean, I'm kind of putting words in his head, but the essence of what he was saying is that, when you look at a crowd in New York, I'll just say that, Deena, for your sake, they're kind of, doing this, but he said, when you look at a ballet, everyone's doing their thing, but it's choreographed, and nature is choreographed. And so when I get into moments of terror and despair because of the drought, and fire, hunting, all of these things, what I do is I try to sink back into what I call the land substrate, into that consciousness, and stay present. As Deena said, retain that integrity and that authenticity, which is resonant with my community, which are in a corporeal sense around me here. I think there are, in terms of, there are these terrible things going on. I think and again, I'm not always equal balance. I go into moments of despair. Last summer, as I've shared with others, was extremely soul changing because of the fire danger and the drought. And we have sanctuary, and Deena mentioned just this responsibility, saving the animals, not just the ones that are quote unquote in sanctuary, but my friends, the trees that I've known all my life, right. The animals that are here. We give food and water to the animals because they have nothing because of the drought and because of humans. But what I, in my practices is to retain their integrity, be with them. And in the sense of be courageous enough to be vulnerable, to feel their vulnerability with courage. That's what they are, is they're vulnerable, they're open with courage, which is not a Bambi type of image. They're very practical, but they are open and vulnerable. And I think that is the key, is to be able to, at least for me, is to retain a vulnerability in the sense of openness, and be, as I say, be the change. I also have to say that and not that there aren't terrible, horrible, things going on, but there's a sea change among our species in so many different ways. So to me, what the animals have taught me in the land of here, living with so long, is trust in life. And life is beyond what we even know here. I agree with Deena. One of those, another American Indian elder told me this story, which in a dream he had, where all the animals came to him and were leaving, and he was so destroyed. He was so upset that they said we can't live here anymore. With all of this anger and the violence, we're leaving. And so I started coming back. Well, how do we call back the animals? And I think we call back the animals in that sense by being the animals. So that was kind of a long answer to a short question, but I think being the animals, being the land, and having that courage to not have things turn out the way we want them to turn out, because there's a much bigger picture. But that, like Deena said, I will second, third, fourth, fifth it in the sense of having the courage, the seventh generation, having the courage to understand that life is life and life will always go on, but it may not be right now the way we want it or the way it looks like we want it.
And I'm wondering if, for all of us, when we're concerned about those who think that we're foolish or naive or deluded or demonic even for believing in spirits or the intelligence of the animals or all of that, if being influenced by them isn't our way of staying connected to that point of view, that there is also an interactivity that we can all take part in, which is to free our minds. Now we're back again to the stripping. We have to allow our minds to change and to make different alliances. So I'm thinking of Thich Nhat Hanh. I am because you are. So right now, I am because you are, because all of you are here. We are here together. This is a community of consciousness. And each one of us has many circles like this. And those also matter. And they can sustain a way of living and being that's essential. And let's just hope that those others will have the kinds of experiences that I have had, that many of you have had, that are undeniable. And we can't deny the miracles that have happened or the revelations. It would be naive to deny them. And so they will also hopefully change enough for the earth to be sustained.
I wanted to just add that, you can type it up on YouTube or something. It's called Bodhisattva en Métro. It was sent from my Swedish teacher, and it's just a very short little video, and it shows this gentleman who gets on the metro, and I think it's in Belgium.
Oh, it's the best,
isn't it?
Oh my God, it's so incredible. Yes.
And I was so moved by it. Deena, you can speak about it. And he gets on, and everyone, it's a commuter thing, and they pan the faces, and he starts laughing. Just and then you see people like looking at him with suspicion, and pretty soon he starts belly laughing, and then you see other faces where they're trying really hard not to laugh. Anyways, I'm giving you the spoiler, as they say. The whole train bursts out laughing. They're weeping. They're laughing.
We can do it, Gay. We can do it right now.
Right now.
So. But you have to let
unmute yourself. Everyone unmute yourself.
Laughter is good medicine.
So you see, to me, that what's so wonderful is love is so easy. Love is so easy, and it's so easy to turn suffering into joy. And I guess, Annie, getting back to you, that you really must see this video. Deena, thank you. I don't know if I can say this a straight face anymore, but it's so just to be realized, it's just there. It's just right there. And again, La Vieja. It's right there, right in front of you. Right in front of you. So that to me is a real lesson in that way. Thank you, Deena.
Thank you, Gay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, La Vieja, and the bears and the elephants and all the trees and all the beings.
Thank you. Thank you, Deena. Thank you, everyone, for spending some time of your weekend with us. We know time is precious, so we do appreciate you creating this community of consciousness with us today. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully, if you do want to have this recorded, it'll be on our website and on YouTube. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.